Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the story of James Rallison, who you probably know as the Odd Ones Out. We're going to explore exactly how he built a massive multimedia empire out of YouTube animation. But we're looking at this through a very specific lens today: the brutal, hidden mechanics of internet creation, and specifically, the intense reality of the crunch mode hook. Section 1. The crunch mode hook and the stress in animation.
So what actually happens when a creator gets pushed to the absolute brink by the internet? Well, to really get James's journey, you first have to understand a mentally exhausting state that creators call crunch mode. Just imagine working so intensely on an animation, desperately chasing a deadline, that you literally lose track of your own basic survival needs. You're sleep deprived, you're starving, and you're just totally consumed by the pressure to hit publish.
And that brings us to a legendary piece of the Odd Ones Out lore: the Subway incident. In this total crunch mode haze, James realized he was starving and his dog Floof hadn't even been walked all day, so he finally took a break. And since he's not a psychopath, he picked Floof up in his arms and walked down to his old workplace, that notoriously laid-back sandwich shop he affectionately calls Subway. Now, obviously, bringing a dog into a restaurant is a massive health code violation, but James knew this specific location was, well, pretty relaxed. I mean, he actually once served a completely unsupervised kid there who just wandered in with no shoes and no shirt to buy a cookie. So he figured, hey, a dog will be fine, right?
Yeah, actually, it was not fine. James tries to order his usual foot-long ham on white with American cheese. And anyone who's worked there knows American cheese is literally the hardest thing to pull apart when you're wearing those plastic gloves. But the employee was making this sandwich suspiciously fast. Like, so fast, he didn't even ask if James wanted it toasted. And right in the middle of this bizarrely speedy transaction, absolute chaos breaks out. Floof jumps the glass counter, pees directly on the olives, and attacks the employee. It is wild, but it honestly brilliantly captures the disconnect of James's life at the time. You've got this cheerful, simple animation style on screen, but his actual reality in crunch mode was just chaotic, exhausting, and incredibly stressful.
Section 2. Beating the algorithm: a shift in priority.
Okay, so why did this intense pressure even exist? Why starve yourself just to draw animation frames? Well, it all comes down to the invisible hand running the shell: the algorithm. See, before 2011, YouTube rewarded high-quality, short animations based purely on views. If you spend a month on a brilliant one-minute video and people clicked it, boom, success. But then the platform totally flipped the script. The new algorithm started favoring two completely different things: total minutes watched and high upload frequency.
This shift was absolutely devastating for traditional animators. The algorithm suddenly started heavily penalizing slow-moving channels. To survive, you had to make longer videos, and you had to upload them constantly. This relentless, machine-like demand for content is exactly what forced creators into that horrible crunch mode we just talked about. It was a frantic race that you basically couldn't win.
Section 3. The art of the hustle: surviving the shift.
But here's the thing: James didn't just survive this algorithmic shift. He actually beat it by totally reinventing how independent animation is produced. During a VidCon presentation, he laid out his exact survival method. He realized he had to prioritize. Step 1, write an incredibly entertaining script. That's the most important part. Step 2, strictly storyboard it to lock in the timing. And Step 3, which is crucial, animate it while cutting as many corners as creatively possible. He essentially built a whole toolkit of time-saving hacks to avoid crunch mode. He used bounce frames, just taking the same image and bouncing it back and forth so it looks like movement. He used clever overextension tricks, but his absolute game changer was how he handled backgrounds. He would draw these massive static backgrounds at full 4K resolution, literally 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. Why? Because it meant he could drop his characters into the scene and then just digitally pan and zoom the camera around without losing any image quality. No redrawing backgrounds for different angles. It saved a massive amount of time. And that leads to a fundamental truth James figured out about the internet. You really don't need perfect art to hold people's attention. Like he says, a good script isn't about being edgy or having some crazy nail-biting plot. People just want to be entertained. A funny, relatable story about working at Subway is always going to outperform flawless, Disney-level animation that takes 6 months to make. Section 4. An Odd1sOut Empire, beyond YouTube. By locking down this super-optimized workflow, James built a foundation that let him completely escape the YouTube grind. His on-platform stats are just staggering. We're talking over 18.7 million subscribers and more than 4.3 billion views on his main channel alone. Billion, with a B. But what's really fascinating is how he used that audience. Unlike a lot of creators, he mostly turned down traditional corporate sponsorships. He focused entirely on building his own personal brand. He aggressively pushed into off-platform ventures, and the success rate is wild. He launched tabletop games. His food fight card game, Cafe Chaos, was fully backed on Kickstarter in under 7 minutes. 7 minutes! He wrote books, like the first sequel, which is a bestseller with a 4.8-star rating. He released a mobile game called Let's Bounce. He systematically took his viewership and turned them into a dedicated customer base for his own stuff. And all of that relentless hustle culminated in the ultimate victory, a hit Netflix animated series called Oddballs. By leveraging his massive audience and that highly efficient production style we talked about, he finally graduated from internet crunch mode straight into mainstream traditional television. And when you look at these graphic novel adaptations, it all clicks, right? You can see exactly how his accessible, simple, bubble-style characters translate so seamlessly into any medium. YouTube, board games, Netflix, comic books. The aesthetic is instantly recognizable. It's totally his own. At the end of the day, James's journey is a masterclass for any digital creator. You can spend a whole month making 1 minute of animation look like it was produced by Disney, but people just want to be entertained. Prioritizing raw entertainment value and figuring out those smart production hacks, that is the real secret to building an empire that actually lasts. So, to wrap up this explainer, we're left with a pretty big question. We've seen how the algorithms shift to watch time force creators to adapt, leading to these amazing workflow hacks just to avoid the crunch mode trap. But we all know the internet never stops shifting. So what kind of chaotic, genius strategies are tomorrow's creators going to have to invent to survive whatever the algorithm decides to do next? Thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep asking the big questions.